Good morning, everybody. I am so glad that you're here. Man, if you remember last week, we started a new series called Put Me In, Coach, and we talked about what it takes to be on God's team. I'm sure if you asked any of us in here if you would rather sit the bench or actually be in the game, you would probably say you want to be in the game, right? It's much more fun. So this week, we're going to keep learning about what it takes to be on God's team, to play a part in what God is doing. Last week, we learned that if we're going to be on God's team, we need to follow Jesus. And we heard a story that Jesus told, a parable about some sheep and how they followed their shepherd. And we need to follow our shepherd, Jesus. This week, we're going to keep learning about how to be on God's team, and we're going to hear another Bible story. But before we do that, let's stand and worship Jesus together.
We trust in you, Jesus. You're all that we need. Your power will pull us through. We're trusting in you. We're trusting in you. You give us hope and life that's forever. You make us bold and we stand together. Your power will pull us through. We're trusting in you. We're trusting in you. We're off on this journey, there's no looking back. With Jesus to lead us, we're on the right track. Oh, 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 oh. Wide open spaces for wide open eyes. We're looking ahead for the next big surprise. Oh, 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 oh. We trust in you, Jesus. You're all that we need. Your power will pull us through. We're trusting in you. We're trusting in you. You give us hope and life that's forever. You make us bold and we stand together. Your power will pull us through. We're trusting in you. We're trusting in you. We're off on this journey, there's no looking back. With Jesus to lead us, we're on the right track. Oh, 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 oh. Wide open spaces for wide open eyes. We're looking ahead for the next big surprise. Oh, 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 oh. We trust in you, Jesus. You're all that we need. Your power will pull us through. We're trusting in you. We're trusting in you. You give us hope and life that's forever. And we stand together. Your power will pull us through. We're trusting in you. Trusting in you. Your power will pull us through. We're trusting in you. Trusting in you. Trusting in you. We're trusting in you. Trusting in you.
Awesome job, guys. It's time to have a seat because we are going to hear from our Bible story.
Stories of the Bible. Joseph and the Promised Land.
This is Joseph,
Hey!
who's the son of Israel and Rachel. Joseph was the most loved of all his brothers, so his brothers hated him. After being sold into slavery and put in jail, Joseph found favor with the Pharaoh and ruled over all of Egypt. He helped Egypt thrive during 7 years of abundance, and then he was prepared for 7 years of famine because God had helped Joseph to understand the Pharaoh's dreams about what would happen to Egypt. Now, during this time, Joseph's brothers came to seek his help, and after testing them, Joseph told them who he was, and he forgave his brothers for all the trouble they had put him through. But Joseph had not seen his father for many years. So he sent for Israel and his brothers' families. Together they all traveled to the land of Egypt, where Joseph would provide for them in the famine. Pharaoh allowed Joseph and all his brothers to settle in one of the best parts of Egypt. And finally, Joseph was reunited with his father. Joseph lived 110 years and saw 3 generations of his family flourish in the land. Before Joseph died, he told his brothers of the future of Egypt. He told them of the exodus that would take place, meaning that they would all return to the promised land of their father Israel, his father Isaac, and his father Abraham. He made his brothers promise that when they left the land of Egypt, they would take his bones with them and bury them in the promised land. Joseph always lived with hope that God would deliver him and his people. Though many people meant to show him harm throughout his life, God meant it all for good, so that many people should live because of his faith.
Man, that Joseph had a crazy life. I mean, can you believe what his brothers did to him just because they were jealous? Or that he got thrown in prison for something that he didn't even do? His life must have seemed really unfair. Have you guys ever had a time in your life when things seemed unfair and it just didn't seem right? Maybe for you, you had to go to bed early, or your parents made you wear dress clothes or take pictures that you didn't want to take, and you thought life was unfair. In these moments, is it easier for you to get angry or for you to be nice? I know for me, it's easier for me to get angry and upset. Like when Mr. Lucas eats the last slice of pizza and I wanted that slice of pizza, it makes me angry. It makes me upset, right? Because it's unfair. I deserved that piece of pizza, right? Sometimes that's how we think. And sometimes that's just how life is. It just is unfair. And for Joseph, we know that his life seemed unfair a lot. But I think we can learn from how he handled it. He might have gotten angry, but even when he was angry, he still followed Jesus. Joseph still put people first. Even when he was sitting in his prison cell, Joseph was putting people first. And that's a big part of what it takes to be on God's team. We need to put other people first. Before we do our memory verse, let's stand and sing our BBS song.
God of heaven and earth, you are amazing. You hold me up with your hand, you give me faith, and I will put my hope in you alone, in you alone. God of heaven and earth, you are amazing. You hold me up with your hand, you give me faith, and I will put my hope in you alone,
Good job, guys. Before you sit down, let's say our memory verse together. Are you ready? Read along with me on the screen. It says, "Have this in mind among yourselves, which is yours in Christ Jesus, who, though he was in the form of God, did not count equality with God a thing to be grasped, but emptied himself by taking the form of a servant, being born in the likeness of man." Philippians 2, verses 5 through 7. Good job, guys. You can have a seat. Let's talk about what those verses mean, because I want you guys to memorize the Bible. I want you to memorize verses, but we need to know what those verses mean. And those verses are really long verses to memorize. And it would be silly to memorize them if we have no idea what they mean, right? Right. Well, I think that they're telling us that Jesus, he came here and he served us. He served people. He put other people first. And Jesus is kind of like, he shows us how to be on God's team in just the way that he lived his life here on this earth. And so if we're going to be on God's team, we need to do what Jesus did. We need to put other people first. So if you don't remember anything else this morning, I want you to remember that we need to, and if you want to be on God's team, we need to put others first.